The Women of Ill Repute, with your hosts, Wendy Mesley and Maureen Holloway.
Wendy, have you ever heard of Dunbar's theory?
No, I haven't. What is Dunbar's theory?
Dunbar's theory is that you can only manage so many relationships in your life, or connections. By connections, he means the number of people you would know well enough to say hello to in an airport, for example.
That's tricky because as a former on-camera person, lots of people say hello and I don't know who they are.
You don't know them. That doesn't count. I'm talking about a mutual relationship. And that number, it's 150. It's pretty precise. And I bring this up because I don't think that Dunbar's theory applies to our guest this week.
Yeah, I want to hear what his number is because George Stroumboulopoulos, I think he probably knows everyone and everyone knows him. So it's got to be.
Most popular kid in the school. He was just given the Order of Canada for just being popular. Strombo, as he's known, because of course he has a cool nickname. I think he maintains connections with more than 150 people.
Yeah. So where to begin? He was a DJ, a VJ, a talk show host, one-time host of Hockey Night in Canada.
Social advocate, UN Goodwill Ambassador, tastemaker, rebel with the cause. I like Canada's boyfriend.
I kind of like that one too.
Yeah, I do. So many people think that they have a special relationship with him.
Despite the fact that Strombo's circle probably greatly exceeds Dunbar's 100, is it 150? I think you said. Oh, yeah. What do we really know?
That's it. So I don't know if he's going to tell us, but we can always ask. Hi, George.
Hi.
Sue, how are you? It's so lovely to hear both your voices in my ears because when I, obviously, Wendy, you and I at CBC for a long time and watching you before that, Maureen, when I started in radio in the early 90s, you had a segment that would air on this radio station in Kelowna that I worked on. And it was just a small little station. And it was one of the many things that you had done. So it's just your voices have both been a part of my psychology for so long. It's just really nice to hear them and to see you both.
Well, likewise. And, the Dunbar's theory thing I came across. Another thing I just want to add to that, as I was reading this morning about Truman Capote, who's back on the news because of the Swan show. He had a list of 2,000 people he hated.
Yeah. So tell us all your secrets. Who do you hate?
I've got about 6 only. Well, listen, not to fact check. I wasn't the most popular kid in school by any means. And I'm not great at keeping in touch with people, which is maybe part of my charm. So I don't know if that's the case, but yeah, I know I've been very, very lucky to, I have a thing in my brain, like I don't have the chip in my brain that makes me self-conscious, and I don't remember ever being self-conscious. I don't care about my opinion on things. I don't care about my experience in this world, and I kind of never have, within reason. So when I meet people, and it's hard for people to believe this because there's so much bullshittiness in our business, that it's hard for them to realize that I actually mean it. Like, I actually do care about that interaction with somebody because I don't believe in an afterlife, but I also certainly, if there were to be one, I don't think you're judged on the totality of your actions. I think you're judged on your last 10 minutes, which is a reminder to be there always. And that's what I want to be and always try to be. So when I meet people, I really do want this to be the loveliest moment because it might be our last. And I really value that.
So the 6 then that you hate, I'm sure you just made that number. Yeah, but do you hate anybody? It's so interesting. There's people that I hate in a moment, but do you actually hate them?
No, I don't hate them. I have to nurture my better angels so that I don't let the street version of me come out because I do have, I'm like any young, as much work as we try to do on our interiors, I think we just are who we are in a lot of ways. So I still feel like that. I have that chip on my shoulder that, you grow up young, single parent home, below the poverty line, rougher neighborhoods. And so I'll never lose that version of me. I remember my best friend, Bob Macwood, said to me once, I was talking at large, we were talking about meditation because I had done a little bit and he does it. And he had said to me, I don't think you should do meditation because it'll make you soft. And part of who you are is hard. And so, and of course, everybody tried to tell him that was bad advice. But I like it because I'm a pretty edgy guy and I don't ever want to not be. So I'll definitely have moments where I'll say out loud to myself that mother and about one particular person. And then I'll be like, look, they're on their own journey. And I try to be Buddhist about it. But I don't hate people, but there are people that I certainly don't want to engage with. I don't want to be around. And in our business over the years, I think especially early on, you work so hard to be a part of it. And then once you get there, you realize, oh, I don't need this. I want the thing that I like to do is actually connecting with people watching. The rest of it, I don't care about. So there's definitely times in our industry where I've made sure my circle was a little bit tighter than it could have been.
I'm going to jump right to something I thought we'd get into halfway through, but I really want to talk to you about it because my kids, I have 2 boys, they're 25 and 30, and they're mad sports fans and mad hockey fans, and they loved it when you were hosting Hockey Night in Canada. But they are kids, right? Or they're young men, but they were kids. And so when I said, I'm going to be talking to George Stroumboulopoulos, they're like, oh, ask him what happened with hockey. Like that to them was, and I think you did appeal to the audience they wanted you to appeal to, but the old curmudgeons who like their interviews done by rote. I mean, I loved your interviews.
Thank you.
You made these players interesting, like beyond the ice. The hell happened?
So I was working at CBC doing the talk show, and there was a new management there. I knew that things were coming. They had told me to stick around. We'd figure a contract out. I didn't like the tone I was getting from them. So I started to think, what am I going to do if I don't do this show anymore? And I got this text message in December saying, hey, should we talk? And I knew who it was from, and it was about Hockey Night. So they talked to me, would I be interested in it? And I remember speaking to 3 senior members of that at this network, Rogers, but also I called Gary Bettman and I said, you guys are crazy. You don't want this. Like, you don't want this. I'm me. I'm not going to not be me. You don't want this. They said, no, we do. And I said, no, you don't. You don't. They said, yeah, we do. And I went, all right. And then so in my brain, I thought, this is a mistake. It's never going to work. But I'm never going to be somebody who is ever governed by fear, ever. I'll do dumb things just to do them. And I thought, you know what? I actually really love hockey and I love sports broadcasting. I didn't love the way a lot of sports broadcasting existed in the moment. So I thought, sure, I'll try it out. But I knew it wasn't going to work. So I made sure that I was protected contractually. And I got there. And what I was actually told by the people who ended up firing me, because the guy that hired me left the company. He left the company. So it was put in the hands of somebody else. So I didn't think we were going to have a great working relationship anyway. But he had actually said to me, the ratings are actually going up with people under 30 and with women. Like, they're going up.
That's why you were hired.
Yeah, that was your job.
Yeah. And I knew that. Also, I knew this, Wendy, when I got to CBC, when they offered me the show, I turned that down 4 times because I had no interest in working at CBC because I also didn't think they had the stomach for that. But I was lucky that Heaton Dyer was in charge and Kirsten Stewart. And ultimately, they knew that the group of people who didn't see themselves as part of our audience would feel welcome because that was always the goal. I knew the same thing was going to happen with the old hockey guys. I knew that would, because that was the path. But the people in charge didn't have the same stomach that the people at CBC did. So I knew it wasn't going to work. To be honest with you, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad it ended. I'm fine with the way it ended because they told me that I was actually told by somebody in senior management, the actual words they said to me were, do less music in your personal life and be more conservative. And I laughed. I thought, no chance. Because what be more conservative means, we all know what that means. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Because I know what it's like to try to connect a country with different points of view, because we did that at CBC for a long time. So at Hockey Night, in the end, I knew it wasn't going to work, but I knew that it could work. But I just didn't think that they would have the stomach for it. There's a lot of great people I worked with there. I really liked them. I have no problems with the experience at all. I also am a grown-up about the industry. Sometimes you get hired, sometimes you get fired. And I'm totally fine with that.
You were like the Conan O'Brien of Hockey Night because they brought Jay Leno back. Not actually Jay Leno.
No, but it's interesting you say that because if you look now at the late night talk show hosts, there's only, I think, 7 or 8 people who used to host a daily talk show that lasted at least a decade who don't have talk shows now. And in the English-speaking world, I'm one of them. Conan was one of them. I've talked to Conan about this. I've talked to Stephen Colbert about this. We've talked about this kind of stuff, which is I stopped watching television a long time ago the way I used to. And I was still hosting the late night talk show when I was no longer watching late night talk shows. And in my back of my brain, I thought, I shouldn't be doing that. I don't want to do this show anymore because I think this version of it is over. I think this version of talk is over. I want to do my version of talk, and I needed to go learn how to do it, which is what I've been working on now. So the same with hockey. If you look at the stats, I think it's a Gen Z stat, but also millennials, an enormous percentage of them, bigger than you would expect, follow sports but don't watch the game live, because the way people communicate and connect to things are different. And I can't connect to them in a more modern way, I think, than some of the OGs do. So if I'm going to be in this business, I want to do interesting shit. I want to do it in ways that I think are forward-looking rather than tried and true. And as you know, we've all done this. We've all worked at places where we are the new people and then we're the wallpaper. And I don't ever want to be wallpaper. I don't think that's interesting to me.
I have this relationship with Maureen now, Mo, where she's a comedian and she understands and knows so much about pop culture. And it makes me think of the relationship that we have a very special relationship. He's my boyfriend. It makes me think of back when you were on the Hour at CBC and you interviewed me standing in front of a bunch of magazines and you wanted me to talk about pop culture. And I know nothing. And so Mo is like shaking her head going, yes, yeah, this is our life. And yet you have managed through that job, the Hour, through the hockey show, through the show that you're doing now, you've managed to find a place for yourself and to argue for yourself. And I just wish that you and I could have something that we could talk about that's not pop culture, because I call myself a mutant and Maureen calls me a moron.
No, I do not.
I mean, for me, it was never pop culture. It was more culture because I did this joke once and it did not land when I was I think there was like the Governor General's Award one day, and I was presenting on behalf of the Tragically Hip. And I tried to explain to the people who call it arts that when I was growing up, the group of seven to me, in the neighborhoods I grew up in, the group of seven were the seven drug dealers on the corner. So I didn't grow up in a world where arts were a thing. I grew up in a world where culture was music and the way we connected and politics and movies and all that kind of stuff. So the newsstand was to me a way where I could take people and get them to connect to you in a different way. So we'll talk culture all day long. I would love to. But yeah, I found that music was my driving force. Music and movies are my driving force in terms of how I understood the world when I was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And of course, reading books became crucial to my development as a young kid. But I never felt like guys like me. Yeah, there were lots of white looking guys on TV, but an ethnic guy from my neighborhoods, we didn't really, I never watched Canadian television and went, yeah, that's my Canada. Because none of the shit I saw on TV was my Canada.
Is it now though? Like what you're seeing now? Are you seeing anything?
Yeah, I'm seeing a little bit. I'm seeing a little bit more, but I think, and maybe this comes from, and everybody has this experience depending on the neighborhood they're from. But when you're from the west side of Toronto and a Gen Xer, we had a very different, most of my friends, I would say all of them, we were the first persons in our family born in Canada. We were the very first people that English was our first language, if that was the case. And we were in a school where every single kid in that school, for the most part, was the first person in their family born in Canada. And we were all West Side kids. So we just have a very unique experience in Canada. And that's why when I got a manager in the US and I was doing all this back when I worked at Much Music, and he asked me to give him the lay of the land of Canada, I didn't even bring up CBC or CTV because I said, these aren't my people. This is not my group. Now, when I got there, I realized, okay, there's definitely a way for it. And I think part of the reason why you're such a great journalist, Wendy, is because the thing that makes us great is the thing that makes us not have the capacity to always pay attention to everything. So why would you need to know about random pop culture stuff when you're actually talking?
Yeah, but nobody cares at all about politics anymore. So it's,
I don't know. I wouldn't say nobody does.
Well, I do. And there are 5 other people, like George's list of people that he hates. But
no, people care about politics, Wendy. I just don't think they call it that anymore. I think we're in the most interesting time in our journey, because when I was growing up, I was trying to explain to people older than me that the system was broken, and the more established people would tell me, the right wingers would tell me, no, it's not. The system's good. You don't know the system's good. Now it's the right wingers that actually storm the Capitol. Right. So for the first time in my lifetime, the people who we don't agree with all agree on one thing, that the system doesn't work. So we actually are halfway there. Now, that second half of the journey is the hardest part.
So you're a Trump supporter, obviously.
But we do agree that it's all broken now. I'm listening to people who I know who are really conservative, who are Trump supporters, talk to me about corporations and talk to me about the establishment. And I'm saying to them, bro, you've kept the establishment in power for a long time. Thank you for finally seeing it. That it doesn't work. So I think that we're more engaged now. I think we're less informed, and I think we have maybe diminished critical thinking skills because a lot of tech companies and social media companies have biohacked and using algorithms to really trick us into things. But we all agreed it doesn't work. And that to me is a positive sign. So I think people care about politics. I just don't think we're at the place yet where we can talk about it. I think we're in the early stages of that.
You're in Los Angeles?
I am right now, yeah.
Boo!
Right now? Or are you there for semi-permanently, or what's going on?
I bounce between LA, Toronto, and New York. But I've been doing that for 20 years. New York about 8, but LA, I've been between Toronto and LA for almost 20 years now.
Do you have a place there?
I do, yeah, I do. I love LA because LA is a walking, talking crime scene. And if you want to know what the city of the future is going to be like, come to LA. If you want to know what living in a world with an increasing income inequality gap, this is what it's like. If you want to see abject poverty and you want to see the riches, here it is on the same street. If you want to know what the real world feels like, hang around Hollywood for a bit, hang around LA. And this is a busted city and a busted state. And so to me, I feel like I'm part of the real world. Everybody has this idea of what Hollywood is. It ain't that. This is the real world in many respects. Toronto's going to get this way in 10 years. Like it's all coming unless somebody has a gigantic rethink about the way we do politics. It's all coming. So I love being in LA because this is some pretty raw stuff here.
But are you still Canada's boyfriend? I mean, how can you be Canada's boyfriend and live in LA?
It's so Canadian to have a boyfriend in America. Where you're like, oh, my boyfriend's in LA.
I'm your side piece. No, it's because, first of all, as we all know, Wendy, borders are arbitrary, and Canada lives in my heart. So I'm a West Side Toronto boy above all, and that will never go away. That's why I'm always back in Toronto. I still live there. I still do stuff there.
Well, what is the attraction of LA? Because before you explained about how it's broken and Toronto's going there and whatever, I was thinking it was all about you get great guests on your show, and you have a motorcycle. So I think there's a little bit of that, is there not?
To be there, yeah.
The number one reason to be in LA is the weather.
Hey, by the way, in Toronto right now, 18 degrees today.
So move.
It's probably better than here. What is it here? It's 19 Celsius here today. But no, listen, it's the weather. It's the motorcycles. It's funny you bring that up. That's an enormous reason why I came to LA. And also, this is an amazing place where a lot of people travel to be creative. And so it's a lot easier for me to find people who are down to do things and try to make stuff happen. This is a place where a lot of people move to so that we can kind of build things together. I love it. But when I started the talk show in Canada at CBC, I would come down here every weekend with a stack of DVDs, and I would go to all these publicists' office, and I would sit with all their publicists, and I would play them clips from our show, and then we would go through their list, and I would tell them who I want on our show, who I wanted but they shouldn't give to me, and who weren't ready for our show. And I just really shoe leathered the whole thing. We got all those guests because A, we had an amazing team, but B, I came down here and I built relationships with people. So that, and they would tell me, we don't have a lot of hosts showing up at our office. And I said, well, I'm a particular kind of fella, so let's make it happen. And that's how we, that CBC show was 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, except for when I was on my cross-country motorcycle trips trying to unwind from the season. But it was like that. And it still is like that for me.
Well, and you get amazing people. And Maddie Matheson, he's a friend of a friend, sort of. And so I was like, hey, will Maddie come? And like, no.
You were late to the table, literally.
he's too big.
Maddie and I just were at a motorcycle show together in Palm Springs. So we were having dinner. We were talking. I've known Maddie a lot. I've known Maddie back to the Alexis on Fire days in the very beginning of that scene. It's actually kind of amazing to see what that era of broadcasters have been able to do. And people and bands have been able to do, that little arts community. Maddie's amazing. You build relationships, but I'm very upfront with people when I talk to them. It's just lots of cats wanted to be on our show. And I would just tell them, I don't think you should, because you're not really ready to be public and real. Like, this is still orchestrated and this is still PR. And I'm not really PR. sometimes you would do it to play the game, but it's not where, and I'm 51. I'm not doing that now.
That's young by talk show host standards.
Weirdly, it is, right? But yeah, I was very lucky to get a lot of people. We had an amazing talent booking team too on that show, a world-class talent booking team that helped build this.
The women of ill repute.
Who would you like to talk to now that you haven't, obviously?
The Pope, Neil Young.
Never Neil Young?
Never Neil Young. I really want to talk to Neil Young. I really want to interview. I love Neil Young and Bob Dylan. Dylan and Neil are kind of my, and Tom Waits in the music world. I've been lucky enough to interview John Prine and Patti Smith and the other gods in my life, and Chuck D and Tom Morello. I've done all that. But Neil and Bob and Tom would be for music. They're the ones I want to talk to. In terms of the rest of the world, I'd like to have a sit down with the Pope. I think that would be interesting.
You're a Buddhist, aren't you?
No, not really. But I read it. I love Buddhism.
When you were raised a Catholic, or?
Well, yes. So the running joke in my family is we were Catholics, and then my mother found God. Right. My mother is an evangelical. She's very, very faith-based. And I went to a Catholic school as a kid. And I suspect I believed in it, but I think I just it took me a long time to kind of, dig up the roots after I cut down the tree. And so I don't have any of that in my life now. And not to sound like a yoga mom running a wellness Instagram account, but I actually believe in kindness. And I think that's the thing I want to go for. And it's not a place of being, it's an act. So that's whatever spiritual connection anybody has. If they're kindness forward, then I want to talk to them.
You're really tight with your mom, right?
Yeah, my mom and I are really, really close. We have nothing in common. We can't talk politics or religion. We have nothing in common, but we just have this tenderness towards each other. I was raised by a single mom. She was, I think, only 19 when she got the news about me. My dad split when I think my mom was 24. I have a younger sister. So it was like us against the world. But what was interesting about the us against the world model is my mother always told me that it's not that way, that it doesn't matter what your situation is. Your job is to be there for other people always. And she told me as I got older that she had no idea what she was doing as a mom. She was just doing anything to keep me out of trouble and to try to keep us being nice. That was her whole thing. But she was a baby too. My mom was a baby with no education, traditional education. But my grandmother was a legend, coming over here from Poland at the time, escaping a couple of, not just the Nazis, but also the Soviets. And I grew up around some women that you just can't mess with them, man. My aunt, my sister. So, and then, I get to work at Much Music, and I'm working with a woman called Tanya Nachev and Denise Donlin. And you're like, my God. So to me, I was just around a world of just a lot of badass women, and they've helped me understand my mom a little bit more, right, as I got older. But yeah, my mom and I are really tight.
I had forgotten about I was raised by a single mom. And when I turned 24 and realized that she had me at 24, I was like, holy shit, 24, you're a baby. But she raised me on her own. And I'd forgotten about how your dad, he kind of like just disappeared when you were a kid.
I was sitting at home and I watched him walk down the stairs with a suitcase and his blue suit on. And then he walked out the door, and that was the end of it. And I think I've seen him I have seen him about maybe 4 or 5 times in the 45 years, but I have no ill will whatsoever towards my dad. My dad was 24, 25.
Yeah, as a kid. Yeah.
Too. And I think, he was working at the Ford assembly line where my grandfather worked, the man I'm named after. And I think he probably looked down the assembly line and saw his dad, and would go home at night and saw his wife with 2 little kids. And I think he just fucking panicked probably and just thought, oh my God, this is my life. And I think he panicked, and which is, by the way, fine. I have no complaints about my upbringing. I know that everybody's allowed to have their own experience, and they talk a lot about trauma in their childhood. I've experienced all that stuff that you would read about in newspapers, but I think how you react to it is really crucial. And for me, my mother said to me from the very beginning, she would say this, you're never going to grow up and have daddy issues, because it's not important, but also sometimes people who love you don't know how to, and they go, and that's okay too. The cavalry ain't coming. This is your job to figure it out. You're not alone.
So she was wise. Oh my God.
Oh, dude. She wrote a poem on the back of a movie poster that I stole, and she wrote a poem and she put it on the back of the door of my house. And every time I left the house, probably from when I was, I don't know, like 12 to 17, she would put her arm around me and make me recite the poem out loud before I would leave the house. And it was, I have to live with myself. And so I have to be fit for myself to know I want to sit with the setting sun and not hate myself for the things I have done. I want to stand as the days go by and be able to look the world straight in the eye. She made me do that all the time. So when I would go out into the street and maybe and I would definitely, took a long time for that poem to take. I caused a lot of carnage in my young days. But eventually I realized, oh, I'm the guy that's reading that poem who's so sweet to his mom, and I'm not that sweet out here. And I think everybody has this. I think men and women, whatever your gender is, you have it. But men particularly we don't get taught how to deal with this. But there's the guy you think you are, and then there's the guy you actually are. But most guys don't have the mechanism to get the guy you think you are to be, to get to that guy. We usually go the other way. So my mom put a lot of foundational things into my brain that made me realize if this is who you think you are and you're not that, you better move this guy over here because it's an act. You have to be actively engaging in being a better person. And it was all that stuff that my mom put into my head when I was 13 that actually, I think she wishes the religion took, but because at that time Slayer and Metallica were out. So I'd made my choice and vetted. But yeah, a lot of what she taught me took. So like my relationship with my mom is, I couldn't be more lucky than to have the one that I have.
Have you ever wanted to be a parent yourself?
Oh, never. It's funny. I think there was a time when I was maybe 18 or 19 where I thought I was going to be one.
That's never ever at that age.
No. And then she called me and she's like, no, we're not. And I was like, oh, okay, thank God. Maybe I was 19 or 20. And that was the only time where in my head, I thought it was a prospect. And I thought, okay, well, if that's the case, then you'll do what you have to do to be a great dad. I didn't have a father. But I certainly grew up around like my Uncle Paul and the man who ended up marrying my mother, a guy called Lon. Like I grew up around really my other Uncle Paul. I grew up around amazing men who had this kind of sense of duty, but also the dignity in the working class and the power of being strong people in your neighborhood. So I did grow up around strong women, but I had great male role models in my neighborhood. The kinds of guys where all the kids would show up and play at their house and you never had to worry. They were great in Rexdale and Malton. So I had these great men. So I just knew what great men should do when I thought I was going to have a kid. But once she told me the news that we weren't having a kid, it was like, well, I'm never doing that again. So like, I'm never going to be in that situation.
Well, surprise.
Yeah.
So no, I never wanted to have kids. I've never found that to be particularly.
It's not for everybody. In fact, some would argue it's not for most people.
Totally. I used to joke on their CBC show, the radio show, that my philosophy is every child left behind but one. I just care about the one kid who needs to hear this song today. And also parents have this, built-in need to protect their family. And my job is to make sure that all your kids listen to good music, not just one family's, right? Not just my own. So I feel like I'm trying to raise kids with great music. Anyways, that was the only thing that I really wanted kids for, was to just pass on music taste. That's it.
Which you do. Thanks, Uncle George.
I tried to.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Slayer and Metallica, and yet you're also a vegan and you endorse something called a straight edge lifestyle. So you don't sleep, you don't drink, you don't do any of the fun stuff.
You don't sleep?
I have no vices.
No, but sleeping's not a vice.
No, I do sleep now. I sleep a little better than I used to. Not great, but I sleep a little better than I used to. Yeah, no booze, no drugs, no meat, no dairy. I barely gamble. I'm a viceless man, and I'm a viceful man. Like how would I say it? I respect the laws of nature and I suppress my own, because my own nature is to be incredibly reckless and I don't care. So I've had to build guardrails into my life to keep myself alive and to keep myself moving at the pace that I want.
And you still listen to Slayer, just straight.
On cassette. Here's my Slayer cassette and my Metallica cassette from when I was like, I got this. I bought these bootleg tapes when I was a kid. This is a second version of it. Ride the Lightning. I think I was 11 when I got this. This one I was maybe 12 when I got this. This is called Haunting the Chapel.
These are actual cassettes for those of you who can't see us. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I have cassettes and 8-tracks and records and digital. Yeah, I love extreme music. I love extreme art. I don't want any music or film or anything in my life to make me feel safe. I want everything to be dangerous. I want to feel despondent afterwards. I don't want to be protected or preserved in any way by outside forces. I want to have the ability to process everything thrown at me and be fine. So anything dangerous comes my way, I process it. When I go through heavy, traumatic events, I don't run from them. You'd be like the bison, you walk into the storm, because I know that I have the mettle to survive it. So I want to listen to things that are uncomfortable. I want to watch things that challenge me. I don't want anything about my existence to be safe. I don't think that's a good idea for most people. I don't advocate this lifestyle, but it's for me. It is for me. And yeah, so I still have all the danger, but I just figured, and I'm not super straight edge in that I will drink coffee. I'll have caffeine.
Oh, wow. We're really on the edge there.
Stand back.
Well, straight edge people, like the OG straight edgers, it's booze, drugs, and sex. And I'm not giving that up. So I just want to be clean as I can possibly be, which is what I'm going, because it'll keep me alive longer. And I really think life's a gift. And I've been so privileged in my life as an adult, but even as a kid, just knowing the people and having the richest experience that I have, I think it would do a real disservice to my grandmother and the effort she put in if I blew myself up. So I kind of really want to do this and live for the family in a way.
You're a very nice man, George.
No. I
don't argue with me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm just really grateful that my brain chemistry didn't betray me. And I know brain chemistry can cause a lot of problems for people in their lives. And my heart goes for them. And I love so much love, but my brain chemistry didn't betray me. I don't have anxiety. I don't. And if I feel anxious or I have those moments, I had this like colossal motorcycle accident a long time ago, and it really rewired my brain. And it was when I was doing that talk show, and I was going through things emotionally that I didn't know how to process, because like, this is all new. I'd really wrecked my brain in this accident, because I left the hospital with a broken bone and no painkillers. And I went straight to the CBC one day and I did the Red Chair show, and I had no painkillers in me. And for 6 months while my bones were healing and my brain was spinning, I did the show every day. And it rewired me in a way that I'll never be the same. And I'm so stupid that I did it that way.
But it's a good thing?
No, it was terrible. It was awful.
No, but you came out rewired.
Yeah, no. Well, so what happened was I was sitting at an airport. I woke up in a parking lot of a motel, and I don't know what happened. I had passed out because I have so much post-concussion syndrome that I passed out. And I remember being in this motel room. I don't know. I was in the motel room, and I checked in with cash, not with my real name. I was on this motorcycle adventure, and I didn't want to be found. So I was on this adventure, and I'm stupid, and I'm Gen X. So I'm like, I'm going to pay cash. I'm not giving you my name. And it was one of those motels where you could do it. But then I had this real post-concussion moment in the hotel room where I thought, oh shit, they're never going to, like, it'll take them 2 weeks before they find my body. So I stumbled out into the parking lot wearing only my boxer shorts, and I passed out in the parking lot because I couldn't keep it. My brain wasn't working. And I woke up, I think 15 or 20 minutes later. And this is what I love about the abandoned parts of the United States, is I laid in a parking lot for 15 or 20 minutes and nobody saw me. It was amazing. And I came to, and I thought, oh, wow, that's not good. I need to figure out what's happening here. And I was like, I got to go to the doctor. I got to figure this out. So I get back to my motel room, which is like 6 feet away. And the next morning I carry on the motorcycle adventure, and I was on a racetrack, and I was really trembly. And then I had to go right. I drove back to Los Angeles and went to the airport to fly back to Toronto to do the show. So I'm sitting in the airport lounge, like just the gate. And this guy sits beside me who I recognize because he was a hockey player that I grew up watching. And we started talking, and I asked him what he was doing down in LA. And he said, he's had a lot of concussions. And so he's been going through this. He's being studied. His brain is being studied. And I said to him, can I talk to you about something? And he said, sure. So I sat there with this hockey player that I'd only met maybe once or twice before. And I explained to him what's going on with my brain. And he said to me, yeah, so everything you're feeling is real. It's happening to your brain. It's happened to me. And he started to walk me through it. And then I said, what do I do? And he said, well, it kind of depends on how you're built. He said, but here's what you do. Just lay back and let it happen, because it can't kill you. So whatever. And that's exactly the kind of advice that works for me. So when I was doing the talk show, and for a while, people were in good fun, making fun of how casual I was and how leany I was on things. part of the reason I was doing that was because I was actually just casual and leany. But part of the reason is when I was standing up doing some of those talk show segments and I would lean hard on the desk, it's because I was going to pass out. And what I would do is I would just, the bright lights and concussions, bright lights are stupid. So I would say to myself, it's a wave, let it happen. And I was quoting him all the time, let it happen, let it happen. And I really started to enjoy it. So now when it happens, because it still happens from time to time, now I don't pass out anymore, but I have moments where I get a bit, whoa, okay, what's going on here? I just go, all right, let it happen. And I feel great. So he really rewired my brain in that way. But that being said, I would much rather not have this enlightenment. I would much rather not have the injuries in the first place.
You don't recommend it, right?
I think I've had 6 concussions, but like 4 of them were not serious. But the problem is it just compounds, right? So yeah, so my brain is definitely rewired, and I work really hard to keep it as healthy as I possibly can, because it was just stupid what I did.
Well, whatever you're doing, it's working. So, George, we got to wrap it. I loved hearing you talk about your mom, because I was raised by, a mom who was divorced when she was very, very young, when she was 25. And everyone said, oh, you're from a broken home, broken. And you're not broken. So maybe you're a bit broken. We all are, but you're not. So it's great.
It amazes me, Wendy and George, how many people, we've been doing this show for 2 years now. We've probably talked about 80 or 90 people. How many of them are either single children or were raised by single parents? I would say a remarkable percentage of these incredibly successful or not even successful, happy, interesting people that we've talked to.
When I did that talk show, same thing. I noticed it was a lot of people figured it out. I don't know how old I was when I heard the term broken home. But I looked at the description of a broken home and I said, yeah, but that's not it's not my experience. Because I think, and maybe this is the secret to the way I view the world, is I never grew up trusting any institution. So I don't trust police. I don't trust governments. I don't trust broadcasters. I don't trust schools. I don't trust courts. So I never grew up trusting them. I used to see horses and think they were cops. So I never grew up in a world where I looked at institutions as if they owed me anything. I never looked at Canada and trusted Canada as a thing. So when the world caught on fire and everybody started panicking about the state of the world, I just looked at them and I said, how is any of this a surprise to you? And then I realized it's because they're mostly listening to the wrong music, because the music I grew up listening to told me that the world was like this, right? And so to me, instead of taking that distrust or taking that dissonance that I felt, and like, of course, when I'm 15, I was angry about it, but I thought, well, why don't I just take all the stuff that I don't believe in and use it as fuel to maybe try to make it better for the next wave, if I can, in whatever capacity I can do it. Sometimes that's by introducing them to a subject. Sometimes it's by challenging a political leader. Sometimes it's just by showing them they're not alone. But to me, it was, I don't have any expectations of the system, because the system has never, ever, ever been on our side. And democracy is really messed up now, but we don't really have, we have crony capitalism and we have economic democracy, and we've only really had it for a short period of time, relatively speaking. I mean, childhood didn't start till the 1950s, right? Before that, kids were in mines. So this is relatively new in the big picture here. And in fact, the people who came up with the concept of democracy didn't believe that everybody had an equal vote. So it's really new in a relative sense. So if I remove my expectations from the experience, then I just have a job to do. And I'm sure you've picked up, both of you, when you've interviewed people, picked up interesting tidbits from them. And I remember I was so lucky to have a dinner once with Neil Armstrong. And he told me, because he kept describing going to the moon as, I'm just a technician going to the job site. And that really haunts me. And he said, because if I looked at it any other way, the task would be too overwhelming. And I wouldn't be able to do the job that I was there to do. And I went, right, bro. That's how you approach.
Yeah, well, it's like it won't kill me. We got to let you go, George, because we're almost out of time. But oh my God, you're an amazing guy, and it's lovely to see
you get that other Neil one day too.
Oh my God, can you imagine?
Oh, Neil Young.
Listen After the Gold Rush is one of the greatest songs ever written.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, George.
Nice to see you both.
Yeah, it's so lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Well.
Yeah, it's true. Canada's boyfriend, but he's just George, really. He's just Strombo. I want him to have kids.
I know. He clearly does not want to have any for,
His own good reasons. Yeah.
when he said off the top, and I never want to forget this, he says he's not self-conscious and he never has been. And that, as much as anything, would be the key to his, not only his success, but his likability, that he really is engaged in his guests without thinking, well, how do I come across? And that's rare. I mean, you could also describe a complete narcissist that way, but he's the opposite. He is just so enthusiastic about people and life, and without being starry-eyed. Pretty compelling.
He's a very unique character, I think, in terms of, like, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke. He now says that he sleeps. When I knew him many, many years ago, I worked closely with him. He didn't sleep, and he was just super, super driven, but driven in a good way. So it's I don't know, either maybe he's a narcissist, but he covers it well because he obviously cares about. He cares about other people. He really cares, and he remembers everything. So I want him to have kids. I want more Georges.
Well, that's your takeaway. Well, I want him to be one of my 150 people that I have connections with, and I think we both achieved that. So that was great.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Women of Ill Repute was written and produced by Maureen Holloway and Wendy Mesley, with the help from the team at the Sound Off Media Company and producer Yet Belgraver.